Welcome to this panel discussion. If you just like to say hello when you join and put your name, your council, if you're from a council, and your email in the chat, that would be really good. Or else just your name and just your name would be fine. I'm going to start the session. My name is Helen Lynn. I'm the Environmental Campaign Manager for WEN, and we've been campaigning for safe, affordable, sustainable and plastic-free period products and healthy periods since 1989, so over 30 years. The session is going to be recorded. If you have any issues with that, just please keep your camera off. That's fine. And so I'm really delighted to welcome our first panel event of Environmental Week 2022. And we're going to be discussing today how reusables are helping councils become more sustainable, improve health, reduce waste, and address period poverty as well. And you might be wondering what your local council could be doing or is doing to address period poverty and to promote reusable period products. So again, this session will be of interest to you to learn from what councils are doing already. And we know right now that there are really progressive councils all over the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, working to reduce period poverty while providing support and incentives for women, girls and people who menstruate to switch to reusable period products. And what we know about reusable period products is they're vastly cheaper, they're less wasteful, they're more sustainable, and reusable period products are things such as menstrual cups, reusable pants, and pads, right down to organic disposable options. And we really think that these are the future of periods. Unfortunately, many find it hard to afford adequate period products, and this is where councils have started to play a really intrinsic role. And as far as we're aware, this is the first initiative of its kind from councils in the world. So it's quite groundbreaking. We do know, of course, that Scotland as a country was first in the world to provide free period products for all that need them. But councils are learning that period product schemes are a really innovative way, not only of addressing period poverty, but also improving health and reducing waste at source, so waste minimisation. And some of the councils leading the way at the moment are Hertfordshire, Belfast, our Hamlets, Essex, Argyll and Bute, and there's also interest from Wokingham and Islington to develop their own schemes. And these are the only ones that we know about at the moment. There may be others, so it's not a definitive list. So please, if you have a scheme going or are interested in starting one, do let us know. And again, I urge participants to introduce yourselves on the chat, put in your councils if you're working in a council, and leave your email as well if you would like us to be in touch. Or if you'd like to persuade your council to start a period product scheme that it's a really good idea, please stay tuned to listen to councils that are leading the way. So I'd like to introduce the panel, let them introduce themselves. So starting from my right, George, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is George Lyttle and I work in Belfast City Council. So I'm one of our environmental education and outreach officers. And sort of the background to our project was we were coming at it from waste side. Our work is all around trying to reduce waste and encourage recycling. So we were coming at it from a waste reduction side as opposed to a period poverty side, who obviously addresses both.
Brilliant. Malachi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Malachi Howe, and I'm a community navigator from the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. So over the last year, I've been working on our period poverty project, and it stemmed from a business case which was put together in 2019 to not only address poverty in the borough, but also address gender inequalities.
Brilliant. And Wen's going to hopefully start some work with Tower Hamlets quite soon. We're very excited about it. Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, so my name's Ellen Roberts. I'm from Three Rivers District Council in Hertfordshire. So I'm part of sort of two schemes in Three Rivers. We have done a pilot of giving away free reusable products, and part of the wider Hertfordshire scheme, we have a 15% discount code with a number of suppliers to encourage people to use reusables, and we're currently partnered with WEN to train teachers across Hertfordshire in how to educate young people at school about reusable period products to try and normalise it sort of from a younger age. One of the sessions is happening this afternoon, so we're very excited.
Thanks very much. Yeah, we've been working with Hertfordshire, which are a great council. Really enjoyed it over the last year. Saskia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Saskia, and Saskia Boujo is my surname. I'm a relationship and sex educator working in London. A lot of my work is around period poverty, period education, and it led me to write a book in 2020 called This Period in My Life. And it was around that time as well that the government were pledging free period products for state schools in my area. We helped make sure that all the academies and secondary schools were signed up because there was a really, really slow uptake because of COVID. So I worked quite closely with sort of the local council in Kensington and Chelsea to make sure everyone's getting their free products. So it's lovely to be here. I'm going to mute myself because I'm aware there's quite a bit of background noise, but I will be on.
Okay, we have Saskia's book here. We include it in our toolkits. It's really good. I can't recommend it highly enough. If you'd like to get it and have a read, it's really useful. So, first question, Ellen, I'd like to know what was the inspiration for your council to instigate the period product scheme initially?
Yep, so the smaller scheme at Three Rivers, where we sort of distributed or made available free reusable products, the main driver for that was actually period poverty. And we just decided, why not put reusables in there? They're great for the environment and more sustainable. People that are struggling to afford them, they then don't have to worry about it. They can just reuse those products. For the wider Hertfordshire scheme, similar to Belfast, that came from a waste angle. So we realised how much waste there was, how much plastic there was, and how unsustainable it is. So we decided to try and promote them alongside a reusable nappy scheme we have to reduce waste and encourage reuse.
Brilliant, brilliant. Anybody else? What sort of started you thinking about introducing these schemes? Malachi, what was happening in Tower Hamlets?
So yeah, in Tower Hamlets, Tower Hamlets is quite a strange borough in that we have Canary Wharf, which generates a lot of money, but we still have some of the highest levels of poverty in the country. So it was a mayoral pledge, the last Tower Hamlets mayor, that he wanted to address gender inequalities, and we saw there was some intersectionality between gender inequalities within the borough and also period poverty. So there was a business case where I think there was an estimate of around, it was suggesting that we dedicate around £300,000 to it, to address it each year. And then obviously COVID happened and everything got put on the back burner. And then a year ago, so yeah, it was a year ago actually, so October 2021, we picked up the baton again, whereby we wanted to see what level of period poverty frontline staff had noticed. So we commissioned 3 separate surveys, analysed the results, and there was a big need for not only, if they could, free period products, but also education on how to open a conversation with someone around having healthy periods and addressing period poverty, and signposting them to reusable products as well and sustainable products.
Great. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned education, and I was wondering, given your background, Saskia, can you tell me why education is so important in connection with promoting healthy periods and reusables?
I mean, very simply, the government pledge after the Plan International study came out in 2019, which said that 1 in 7 under 17-year-olds were missing school due to lack of access to products. After that, the government poured lots of money into this, but it still didn't solve the problem. And so that tells us, and I work in many schools where the products are actually locked in a cupboard in the nurse's office, and I'll be teaching a class right next door and they won't be aware that there's product there. So unless there's a period positive approach on a whole school level, we're never going to eradicate period poverty. There's got to be conversations, there's got to be education, it's got to be normalization. And once we can talk about it, then we can start to bring in the sustainable angle, because as we know, young people are so environmentally aware. And those that have switched to the cup, for instance, have never looked back. But there needs to be much more conversation around menstrual cups as one, but lots of other products as well. But talking about it has to be something that all schools take on. And unfortunately, it's still not quite the case.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we know from our experience as well doing workshops how key education is, and we're doing workshops with Hertfordshire and Tower Hamlets as well, sort of educating teachers, because there's very little in the school curriculum, time and space to discuss menstruation and reusables as well. But I suppose just kind of, picking up on the waste issue, because we know that these schemes don't just address period poverty, they also benefit health, but also help reduce waste. And I think, George, you've done some work in Belfast looking how much waste is diverted from landfill as a result of these schemes.
Yeah, so we, a bit like Ellen, whenever we were starting our project in the first place, we had previously run a nappy scheme, and we were looking at another sort of, a lot of our work was focusing on recycling, and we were looking at more what we can do to reduce waste, and sort of from maybe a slightly different angle. And a few years ago, a waste compositional study was done, which basically takes so many bins from the city and divides it out to see what sort of waste is coming from on the average household. And that worked out that around 4 kilograms of period-related waste was produced per household per year. So that gave us a sort of starting point. So from our scheme, we give away over 3,000 products to households within the city. And I mean, we're in the process of carrying out a survey at the moment to see how many people who got those 3,000 plus products are actually using them. Because there's one thing is to give them away, but the other thing is whether not people are actually using them or not. So if everyone was using them that we gave them away to, that would equate to about 12.5 tons of waste per year being diverted from landfill. Now, obviously, 100% of people won't be using them, but from the initial results we got back, the majority of people are using them. Not all are using them 100%, and that's something that we sort of think is a positive, because there seems to be an awful lot of sort of thinking around a lot of things that has to be all or nothing. So you either use them 100% of the time or you don't use them at all. And a lot of the feedback we got was that some women were using them at home, but didn't want to use them when they were out. And I mean, that's fine. It's better than using them half the time than not using them at all. So potentially, I mean, it has a big influence on the waste that's produced. And of course, as I'm sure you know, a lot of disposable products have a lot of plastic within them. And also, the type of materials they are. So where there is cotton and stuff in them, if that goes into landfill, whenever that is breaking down, it produces methane, which is a really powerful greenhouse gas. So there's a whole lot of issues around the disposal part of single-use products that by using reusables, that's all avoided. And, obviously reducing waste and avoiding waste in the first place is far better than trying to, deal with it once it's been produced.
Definitely. I mean, you touched upon this question here that we get asked a lot and kind of think about a lot. So is it better to have free products and give them away to everybody? Or is it better from your experience as well? And like you all to kind of contribute to this, heavily discounted products. What have you learned from the work so far, do you think?
If I just jump in first,
sure.
We initially, our idea was that we wouldn't give them away completely for free, because we were concerned that people will take them because they're free rather than because they actually want to use them. And we have experience of other things that we've done, other projects where people, because they haven't paid anything for them, we were worried that then they're almost regarded as worthless, if that there's no sort of value to them. And we were worried that it would be giving away, all these products and they'd be sitting in the back of people's drawers and stuff. So we initially had wanted to charge a small amount for them, like a token amount, whether it was £3 or £5, whatever it was going to be. But when it went to, obviously as a council, everything has to go through committee and be approved by our elected members. And they were very against there being any charge for it. So it was our elected members wanted it to go for free. And then we had thought, if we reopen the scheme next year, do we go down the free model again, or do we have some sort of charge for it? And again, our elected members wanted it to be free because they felt that if there was a charge, no matter how small, it may exclude people from participating in the scheme who otherwise might not be able to.
Okay. Ellen, what's been your experience? Because you have heavily discounted products.
Yeah, so we've got our 2 schemes. So the had a similar issue of, if you give them away free, fantastic, you probably are helping people, but we don't get that data on whether they actually use it. And as George said, being free, they're probably less likely maybe to actually use them. So although they have been popular and people have taken them, we don't have any data currently on whether they've actually gone on to be used. We found the biggest barrier, it's similar to reusable nappies in that the biggest barrier to them is people not understanding them, and it's actually the education and information around them more so than the cost. Although we have a 15% discount with a number of suppliers, if you're buying a sort of £20 cup, then actually the 15% discount maybe isn't that large, and it's more the information and the understanding and the support that goes with it, which is the biggest barrier. So I think whether you're giving them free or with a discount, it's really that support and trust that people need. They need to be able to see the products up close, feel them, touch them, understand how they work. And that's really the biggest impact, I think.
Sure. That's why we use this, we call it a toolkit when we're doing the workshops. And we have examples of all the different products, and it can be passed around in the class, and everyone can touch them, feel them, fold them, see how they go in, see how they come out. So it's really important, I think. Saskia, would you like to say something about this?
Just on the scheme that the government launched, which the providers of the products were by a company called PHS Group, which obviously were very popular during the pandemic. They made all hand sanitizer and all those extra hygienic items that we needed. They were the providers. And though there were a list of stockists that schools could choose from with regard to product type and brands, if the school didn't specify which product they wanted, they would default and dispatch the leading brand of period pads, which is the UK's biggest brand, 90% plastic, and that's the product that schools were getting. Once schools were aware that there was a list that they could choose from, they were then quite reticent to go greener because there was a price difference. So that price difference is quite ingrained, despite the fact that, this wasn't coming out of anyone's pocket. It was, the money was given by the government. It was, once you compare it to the big brand, it's very difficult to then make that switch psychologically to the greener brands. But it's exactly like Ellen said. I think it was Ellen who said, you need to see and compare the products once next to the other. And when we do these workshops with young people and even with adults, it's a very powerful moment when you suddenly look at this very plastic product that we're sitting on all day, all the health implications around that, let alone environmental implications, next to a product that's a much healthier choice. Then they're prepared to make that investment, that extra, spend that extra. But I think, if this plastic product is available and there and so visible, it's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be more work in schools. So to answer a previous question, it would be, in my opinion, about completely removing that option.
Sure.
On a schools list anyway, if we're talking about reusables.
Yeah. I mean, we are still calling for, we launched it last year, regulation of all period products. So they're regulated on the General Product Safety Directive at the moment, but they're not even mentioned in it. And there's no transparency about what's in the products. There's no regulation effectively about them. So to start with, yeah, we should be getting a better idea of what's in these products. And I suppose, yeah, for us as well at when this kind of pull, because obviously we want to address period poverty, but we also want to ensure they're safe products, because you're just kind of going to be replicating the circle of toxicity if you don't have safe reusables as well as, you know, and it's actually, while we're addressing period poverty, it shouldn't come at a cost to our health, I think. But just something else that thinking about as well, Malachi, you probably have some experience of this. How do we approach menstrual education and learning from ethnically diverse communities, especially in Tower Hamlets? I know that Tower Hamlets has an impressive raft of provisions for tackling poverty in the borough already, but it's adding period poverty scheme to this as well.
Yeah, so I think the Tower Hamlets at the moment, we have at least a 35% Bangladeshi population. And when we were deciding to put together this workshop, we ensured that we did try to speak to as many members of that community, whether it's residents themselves or organizations that work very closely with those residents. And when we put together the request for quotations for the workshops, we really wanted to make sure we implemented the fact that there is a large number of Bangladeshi members and also a high Muslim population as well. So we would definitely need the workshop to understand those sensitivities and address them appropriately. Just going back to the previous question around free products versus discounted products as well. In Tower Hamlets, we haven't really approached the discounted products as yet. We've decided to focus on the free products as an extension of the state school offer that the government is given. And we've ensured that the products that we are given are from distributors that really take care in regards to what they put within these products. We have put a major focus on reusables as well. I'm a big fan of free products, but we'll have to get that data, because we are giving it to we're going to focus on the homeless shelters and homeless accommodations first to see what type of response they get, and then from that we will see if we have to change the model from free products to discounted.
Sure. So it's a learning curve for everybody, but you know, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is kind of groundbreaking work. This has not happened before, you know, so we're all learning, and I think it's really good if like I said before, if people are interested in councils talking to other councils, please get in touch with Ellen as well, who kind of getting a group together of councils to learn from each other really about these schemes. I suppose one of my questions as well is just how do we ensure that these schemes are sustainable? And what role does government, I mean, Saskia has mentioned this already, play in supporting these schemes and councils to initiate them? Ellen, do you have anything?
Yep. So our discount scheme is now largely self-running and sustainable. So we have all of our communications resources, websites, we have engaged suppliers. I think we've got 8 or 9 now, I believe, that are signed up. So in terms of officer time and financial resources, there's little to none really, which is brilliant. So that was off the back of our nappy scheme. We used to offer free products, but that was really resource intensive and we just couldn't keep it up long term. It was too popular. So we had to redesign a scheme that would keep running and sustain itself and not cost the council, which is where we promote these suppliers, and they in turn offer our residents a 15% discount on products. So it's mutually beneficial, which is fantastic. The cost would be where we are working with WEN and training with teachers, whether that's going to be sustainable long term. How many can we train? How many teachers stay in the area and keeping those skills within our sort of council? We're not sure yet. We'll see how this one goes, see where else we could possibly get funding, how successful is it, and everything else. So that's yet to be seen. But it'd be great if the government got involved and made this mandatory in schools and provided some more funding for it. Sure. And just made it part of the curriculum that everyone sort of teachers are properly trained in it and students properly receive the education.
Definitely. I mean, I was talking to Islington Council, and one of the councillors had kind of done a rough calculation, and she said if you gave everyone in Islington a voucher, everyone that would be experiencing periods in Islington, a voucher for £50, this would cost around £42,000 a year, much less than the potential £143,000 that they already spent on nappy vouchers. So I think that kind of puts it in perspective as well. You know, it's like the nappy schemes, I think, have been a great success, but we need to replicate them now with the period products as well. So I'm going to pick up on we've had some questions from the participants. Maybe for George, what type of products are given by the council? Oh, you may have mentioned this already.
We offered people a choice of either a cup with a sterilising pot or like a full cycle pad set. So our residents were able to choose which they wanted out of those two. Our scheme opened and closed within 23 hours because we were completely overwhelmed by demand. We had 3,156 orders.
Oh my God.
And we were not expecting anything like that. I mean, the only thing we had to base it on was our nappy scheme. And it has always been sort of a slow burner scheme, if you like. So it sort of ticked along, and we sort of thought, oh, this will be exactly the same. Instead, we put out, the council put out one tweet and one Facebook post. And then, as I say, within less than 24 hours, we had to close the scheme. So anything we were going to do around promoting it or, you know, working any sort of education program around it, whatever, we didn't have a chance to do it because we were just flooded with requests. So it took a long time to get all those processed. One of the things we had to do was check that they were actually Belfast residents because we couldn't provide them to people who were outside our council area. But one positive thing from it was a lot of people who either were applying or who were just replying to the social media posts, who were outside of the council, were referencing in their own councils and then trying to encourage them to do the same thing. So going, look what this council's doing, why are we not doing the same thing? And since then, I've been contacted by several councils here who are looking if they can replicate the same sort of scheme. So I say initially we offered people, they could choose from the two different types of product. We are looking to reopen the scheme again next year. And we're not sure exactly what way we'll run it then because of the amount of that's going to cost. We're going to have to go out to tender this time to, you know, because the council, we're spending public money. So we have to make sure we're spending it efficiently and stuff. So it'll have to go out to tender. So I'm not sure, but I would like it to run in the same sort of thing where people get to choose out of a couple of choices rather than us going, this is what you're having, because some things will maybe be more suitable for some people than others.
Sure. I don't know, Saskia, do you know about how this might kind of, I was wondering about the marrying between the government scheme and what councils are doing, you know, in terms of what's available in schools and stuff. I know that the budgets aren't very large, so the potential for having, I don't know, reusable period pants might be not be, you know, quite, you know, you need about 5 at least probably to start, whereas the menstrual cup you just need once.
Yeah, exactly. And I think young people in schools who are just starting their period often not ready for a cup yet. And I think it's just for ease of being able to come to school and feel comfortable in a product. Initially, it is going to be a pad that they use. They're fascinated by the reusable pads and the pants. But again, there needs to be a lot of conversation around how you care and manage for those. There has been a few studies around people not even wanting to hang their wet reusables in their own bathrooms, just feeling ashamed of having a product hanging there in front of other family members, perhaps. So it's really important to look really at every step of how you're going to manage this product, because if they're not able to maintain that, then it's going to be very difficult, and they're going to switch back to a disposable. So there's all those things to think about. To answer your question about government and council, they're annoyingly disconnected. They shouldn't be, but they are. And just to pick up on what Ellen said, it's so important that in schools, you can have an outstanding school from an Ofsted point of view, but you can have extreme period poverty in an outstanding school. So that somewhere doesn't quite make sense. We need to get the people right at the top thinking about every aspect of school life. How are they meeting their needs? There's still not all the schools have signed up to the scheme. So there's products sitting in warehouses at PHS still waiting for schools to be aware of it. And what we need really is all these passionate people that are being trained by WEN and City to See and so on. And they're the ones that are going to come in and make a difference. And I think if those passionate people can come in and get the ball rolling, then we can start to have a conversation around reusable products and how we care for them. So it's annoying that it's some fantastic headmasters and headmistresses around the country who haven't quite linked absenteeism to period poverty yet.
Sure.
So still some really connecting to do there.
This is the taboo and the stigma around it as well, still being there. And actually, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. I forgot to mention actually stockists and producers. We have an environmental coalition, I think 60 odd members. And a lot of them are kind of small businesses making fantastic reusable products. And obviously they're the people as well who should be in council, discussions with the council in terms of provision, So, but there's a question here for Malachi. How are you finding the focus on poverty versus waste? Is something you've come across?
That's quite an interesting question, because until I started this period poverty project, I didn't really appreciate the link between the poverty aspect and the waste aspect. And I think going forward, I would really like to include environmental waste within the local authority, within these conversations. I would also like to include the Tackling Poverty team. I think this issue and concern is much bigger than a sub-department within public health, and I think a coordinated approach, not only including departments within the council, but also third sector organisations, the NHS as well, would really bolster the approach that we're trying to take in Tower Hamlets. But yeah, I would like to focus a lot more on the waste side as well.
I mean, yeah, sorry, you just mentioned the NHS. We're going to have a blog by somebody in the NHS looking at promoting reusables in the NHS, especially period pants. So I'm not sure when that's been published on the website, but so there is interest there as well. I think, Ellen, you've kind of worked with different departments within your council, haven't you? Hertfordshire Waste Aware?
Yeah, so we are focusing more on waste, but obviously very aware that there is a poverty element to it as well, which I think really helps with campaign and sharing information, encouraging people to take it up, because you can reach people from different angles and different demographics and people that have different priorities, because there's so many different angles to it. It sort of affects everyone in some way. So it's really great to link them. And we have now been given £1,000 to try and address the period poverty angle across Hertfordshire, but obviously £1,000 isn't a lot to address the 10 boroughs and district councils. So we're currently debating how best to put that to use. and seeing if we can link up with other areas of the council. We do in Three Rivers, but in terms of wider Hertfordshire wide, if you're struggling with pots of money and funding, I think it does reach so many different areas. If everyone has a little bit, you might be able to pull something together between you all.
So that's a bit of learning for councils to talk to each other cross-departmentally as well. It would be really, I think if something that impressed me when we started discussing our work, that so many departments within the council were in discussion. There's a question here, I don't know, maybe something, George, that you can answer. I've been told that at the moment disposable period products and waste aren't classed as toxic, but nappies are, but that is due to be switched around. Do you know the answer to that?
Not really, no.
Okay. Anybody else?
Obviously we would get the majority of period related waste would be in household bins, in the general waste bin, and nappy waste is obviously going into the same bin, so that will be disposed of either in landfill or turned into energy from waste fuel and incinerated. I don't know if it's different now for the bins you would get in toilets and stuff that are specifically for period products. I don't know the legislation and stuff around that, because our work would all be around household waste. So as far as households are concerned, certainly in Northern Ireland, it's not classed as a different type of waste. It all just goes in together. But I don't know, it may be different in other parts of the UK. And it might be different for those specific collections that are for a particular type of waste, like the period bins you get in toilets and stuff. But really, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very specific. Malachi or Saskia, have you any information on that? No.
No. I think, yeah, I think going back to what Ellen was saying, this is why it would be good if I had cross-department expertise, and then I'll be able to know the answer. Yeah.
Any residents of Tower Hamlets, push your council to actually be talking to Malachi's department as well, certainly around issues of waste and stuff. I don't know if there's any members of the Real Nappies team from Wen here. They could answer that. We work on the scheme Real Nappies for London. So if anybody's got the answer to that, please let me know. There is another question. So for Ellen Malachi, how are you finding the focus on poverty versus waste? We are running a pilot focusing on addressing the poverty elements and working closely with partners, but having a hard time getting engagement we hope for. We'd love to hear best practice. This is Carla from Essex County Council.
I can dip in quickly. I think before actually speaking to other councils, I think I have actually met Ellen to talk about what is happening in Three Rivers. Yeah, the waste side just never popped into my head. It was completely focused on the poverty side. But I think, again, it is really important that both aspects are championed equally. And once you have both aspects in the room, you can see where one side is weaker and you can focus on improving that, and yeah, vice versa. So I intend to, after we start our workshops within the local authority, I intend to try and contact someone within environmental waste within Tower Hamlets itself.
Great. Yeah, somebody from Wales, Elen from Wales, so it could be Wales specific change. We are having to offer separate waste collections for absorbent hygiene products. So maybe it is country specific issue. It's something, sorry, I touched on before, because it does affect the waste from period products. You know, it is obviously it can't be from single-use disposables, it can't be recycled. But how do we ensure that we're offering the best and healthiest products for use, including reusables. I don't know if it's something you've come across, Saskia. You know, I'm particularly concerned about the toxic chemicals and additives in single-use disposables, but also we're seeing them in some reusables as well, especially around this odor issue. So additive to reduce over in period pants. And it's just replicating the same taboos I think we've had around single-use disposables. How do we actually address that?
Yeah, I think it's a wider issue around relationship and sex education generally. It's not specifically about periods, it's more about learning about the body, learning about vulval health, being able to use the word vulva accurately, and also being able to think critically and teaching young people to think critically about the sorts of products that are available. Does it mean they're safe? And in fact, some of them are potentially damaging and harmful. And all this is sort of part of a bigger picture that we're trying to build to make young people think more critically about what they're spending on. So it's, you know, when we talk to young people about their health, it's very much about what are going to be the healthiest products for you to use. What are the signs and symptoms of using a product that doesn't fit well? You know, is it normal to have itching or dryness or a change in smell and so on? These are the sorts of conversations we're trying to have in the classroom, so that they can make a choice that is healthier. On training, we often say, you know, we can't push a brand, we can't push one idea. That's not our job. You know, we're not there to enforce anything. We're there to signpost. We're there to give them the information in the hope that they can make a better choice. And I think ultimately we are looking at a much wider variety of product than we were ever used to. I was speaking to someone about sanitary belts the other day, and thank God we've moved past all that. So I think we are moving forward. I think it is, you know, it's still hard listening to some of this information, because some of us feel quite strongly that we've been led down the wrong path. But there is good work happening, and it's just, I think, about presenting the information, having the time and space in schools. You know, they're still only getting 2 hours a year from age 10 on puberty, and part of the puberty lesson will be on periods. So there won't be enough time to cover, you know, products in any real depth there. So that's why I was talking about having passionate people to really make the time, and for people in schools to see it as worthwhile. So,
I mean, I suppose, again, from the sessions we've done in Hertfordshire, there seems to be a lot of interest from teachers. I mean, teachers themselves may not have tried these products at all. Yeah, they're very interested, and hopefully this will sort of help sort of stimulate their discussions around the products. And just to go back to Elen as well about this, because they're actually funding these toolkits. So each school, each teacher has a toolkit as well to talk about the products in the classroom when they're talking to their pupils. Why specifically did you pick on teachers, Elen, at the start for the education?
So
is that obvious? Maybe it's too obvious.
Well, firstly, obviously it reaches a huge number of people. If you can access teachers, you've got all the students, it's, you know, a fairly easy in, and you're meeting people where they are rather than trying to get people to come to some, you know, event or something like that. But we're also really keen on the teaching element and the wider conversation around stigma and shame and all these kind of issues that go along with it, which are also sort of the invisible barriers to using reusable products. So we wanted to try and normalize it rather than trying to find out about it when someone's 30, 40 maybe, or, you know, older, younger, whatever, that they're maybe quite set in their ways. They have the products they use and they trust, and that's what they're used to, that's what they've known. It's harder to change those behaviors. But if we go back right to the start, maybe before they've even started their period, that they learn these other products are available and that they are normal and that other people use them, that they may be more likely to start that from the beginning and have a positive behavior from the beginning rather than change a long-term behavior. So really trying to encourage that sort of safe space and education from the start.
And that's why some of the major period product manufacturers used to go into schools to talk about their products. Not in Ireland, mind you, but in the UK, I know definitely. So yeah, and I noticed that Argyll and Bute actually have a school education pack. They've been sharing in schools as well. There's more information on their website. I'm not sure if they're doing education around that, or they're providing the products free, or I don't know if Kerry's still around to talk about it. Are there any other questions from participants? Susie says, we have to be mindful not to lump further shame onto those of us locked in poverty who have limited product options available to them. Education and breakdown menstrual stigma is the key. Absolutely, absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Yeah, George, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just on the thing around the normalizing and you know, trying to introduce people to reusables at a younger age. From our feedback that was coming in from the people who received our free products, and this is only anecdotally, we haven't gone through them to see how many this, you know, what a percentage this was, but a lot of them, of certainly that we read through, were from parents who had got them for their teenage daughters who were either just starting their periods or had just recently started them, and it was a way of letting their daughters try reusables from the start. I think, as Susie mentioned about, you know, there is a cost to buying them. You know, I think the cups that we provided were about 15 odd pounds or so with the sterilizing pot and stuff, which if you're on a very low income, that could be, you know, whether you're going to eat for a week or not, or whether you're going to have electricity on your meter. So that was supposed when the free part, but it also meant that people were able to try them without having to fork out that money, you know, and to some people £15 is nothing. To somebody else, you know, as I say, that's a week's food or a week's electricity. So it was great to see that it wasn't just people getting them maybe for themselves, but also to introduce their daughters to the scheme, so that they'll be starting reusables possibly right from the start, and will use them maybe for the rest of their lives. So it was a nice anecdotal thing that we came across, and it wasn't something that we'd been really expecting. So it was a nice thing to see.
Mm-hmm. And these pots, you actually put the cup in and it cleans, sterilizes them. Yeah. I think we've got to get quite innovative around addressing period poverty as well. Surely there's other ways we can reduce the cost or spread it out to help people be able to afford reusables if we can't give them for free initially. Kerry from the Grab Trust, you have your hand up.
Hello, yes, I am here. I'm
yes, you are
the
here.
one that's been doing the Argyll and Bute packs, the education packs that you mentioned. First off, apologies for my attire. I'm actually on holiday and just nipping in for this. Okay. It seems so interesting. I'm in full-on painting garb. Yeah, so you were saying you weren't too sure how we'd done it. So just to let folks know, we came up with the idea that we wanted to improve education and promote reusables more in Argyll and Bute, and we, did a bit of research into it and found City to Sea do packs, which are quite good education packs from what I could tell, but they only do it for England. So we then decided, okay, we'll do our own packs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we put together a box which has, we got donations of example products from, it was Cheeky and Hey Girls. They've been fantastic supporters of it, and they donated products enough for every school in Argyll and Bute to get this box for free. So it's got a menstrual cup, it's got a few examples of different reusable pads and a couple of example reusable pants, as well as, I'm not quite sure what the proper name for it is, the sort of wet bag that you would put things in. You can put your used pads
it's wet bag,
in a bag or something.
Yeah.
So to try and give the students the confidence that, you can change it at school. It's not going to leak all over your bag and be embarrassing. The high schools also got a pack of education cards that Hey Girls produce, which has sort of, like fun quizzes and so on. It's about puberty in general and periods. It's not specifically about their products or specifically about reusables. It's about the whole topic. And then the whole box links to a whole bunch of online resources that the teachers can use to educate themselves and to how to teach it. Again, a lot of it was from Hey Girls. They have full school education lesson plans and everything that teachers can use. But also Cheeky have an app that they've just released that is aimed at students then being able to do their own learning in their own time, which, as you're saying, that the schools definitely don't get enough time in their syllabus to talk about it properly. So it's nice that the students can go and do their own learning beyond that, and they've got at least some guidance as to where to start. But yeah, I've dropped my email in the comments, so please, anyone that's interested, wants to know more, do just drop me an email and I'll happily help when I'm back from a holiday.
Okay, thank you very much for breaking your holiday to talk to us. Thank you and attending. I don't know, yeah, because I was talking, there's a Sabrina from Wokingham, was talking to them as well recently about introducing a scheme as well. So again, if there's any other councils or organisations here that kind of want to start a scheme, introduce or get their councils to start a scheme, or actually are a provider and want to provide these products to councils as well, please put your information in the chat as well. So should the last question I had was really, given that this is groundbreaking work, as I've said already, and we all need to be learning from each other about what works, what needs improving, and what we actually enjoy as well from our experience so far. Would you just like to say a few words about that, Malachi, first?
Yeah, so for me, I first was aware of period poverty about 7 or 8 years ago. I had a partner that had invested in menstrual cups, so it was on my radar, and it did rather confuse me how it wasn't spoken about a lot more. So when I was finally given this project last year, it really gave me an opportunity to actually go and speak to providers around what products they offer, whether it's reusable pants, pads or cups, really listen to the passion in their voices when they really want to tackle not only preventing chemicals being used in their products, but also how they will work in developing countries as well. I found that really good. I found speaking to other councils as well really fascinating, really opened up my eyes to how this is a across the local authority issue. I really enjoyed doing the surveys and just seeing the responses from not only sexual health charities, but we also had responses from Doctors of the World. We had responses from carers. So it really affects everyone. And yeah, I'm just really happy I could like do this small part, and hopefully it will grow out to something really big.
I'm sure it will, and we're looking forward to starting our sessions with our Hamlets quite soon. So yeah, somebody, Fran said, I work at a fertility clinic and looking to perhaps link up with a reusable supplier to encourage our patients to explore reusables during their treatment. And again, for me, it's all about benefiting health as well. Certainly, because sadly, some of the chemicals, even though they're only present in small amounts in single-use disposables, have been linked with infertility. So I think it's a very good move to possibly switch to reusables if at all possible when you're doing treatment. Ellen, do you want just to say a little bit about what you've enjoyed, what you've learned from the work so far?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the biggest learnings is having the products available. So I quite often do sort of stalls and engagement events where I have one of our toolkits, demo kits, sort of out on display for everyone to see. So, which really sort of helps break the taboo when people come over and talk and realize what it is. But also lots of people saying they'd heard about them but hadn't seen them before, weren't sure how they worked, or, you know, didn't trust them. So I think really having them available for people to look at and have that conversation with is really important. One of the things we've struggled with is measuring the impact. I'm sure anyone that works in the world of waste will understand what that's like. But we've had over 500 people signing up to the discount code, but relatively low number of purchases going on from that. So we have no way of knowing currently. As I said before, if you're spending £20 on a cup, then, you know, to some people, the 15% discount might not be enough. They might not bother going through the admin of adding their code, or they might see a product somewhere else. They might have got that information, but not necessarily use our code. So it's difficult to measure it. We definitely need more education. I think that's been established in this whole talk. And the thing I've enjoyed the most is the conversations. So periods aren't something that traditionally we sort of talk about. I hadn't really spoken to many people about them in the past, but I've had more conversations about periods in the last like year and a half than I have in my entire life. And it's been great just trying to encourage those conversations with colleagues that I never thought I'd be discussing that with, friends and family outside of work, realizing we all have these shared experiences that we were all maybe embarrassed about, or, you know, conscious about, had that stigma around, that actually we're all going through the same thing, we're all experiencing a similar thing, and we've got lots of tips and support for each other. And I've found that one of the most enjoyable, unexpected parts of working on the project.
It's brilliant. And yeah, it does break down taboos and stigma, but it also helps, yeah, to speak about periods and their impact on all of us, really. And certainly for me, that's one of the most enjoyable parts of my work as well, and has been for the last 30 odd years. George, do you want, before we come to Saskia for the last word, do you want to say something about what your learning has been?
Yeah, I mean, this was a completely new thing to us. You know, we say the only thing we had to sort of fall back on as any sort of experience was our nappy scheme. And as I said earlier on, this was completely different. The response to this, I said, was almost overwhelming. So one of the nice things for us was, as a council, especially anyone who, as a council officer, especially anyone who does anything to do with bins, nearly every time the comments you get on social media are all pretty much universally negative. So it was great to finally have something that we'd done where you had people praising you for what you were doing and saying that it was a great scheme. And yeah. I think there was, out of about 320 odd comments on the Facebook post, there was maybe one negative one. And the rest of them were all sort of, it was overwhelmingly positive. One of the other things I have found sort of rewarding, if you like, is reading some of the comments that came back on the surveys, especially things around, you know, people saying they'd love to have tried them, but they didn't want to pay them out, or they didn't have the money to pay it out, or, you know, they were worried about buying the product in the first place and, you know, it not being for them, and then them, you know, them wasting their money and stuff. And so it had given them an opportunity that maybe they wouldn't have had before to try to reusables. And some people had said, you know, it's amazing, I've switched, I'm never going to go back. And I'm telling all my friends to switch to reusables and never go back, you know. So it is also, like Ellen, I've talked more about periods in the last 6 months than ever in my life. Especially coming at it, obviously, from a male perspective, it's quite different. And, you know, sort of sitting in team meetings and discussing them with male and female colleagues, which would, you know, would never have been done before. You know, we just wouldn't have come up in conversation particularly. And also, you know, talking to other council officers in Northern Ireland, both male and female. And it's that, as everyone has talked about, the whole stigma and embarrassment around it. And, you know, I didn't think a year ago that I'd be spending hours talking about periods. You know, it wasn't something that was likely to have happened. So it's quite an unusual thing. It's a change for me that I wouldn't have otherwise maybe done. And maybe it's broken down a bit of my feelings of embarrassment and maybe stigma about it and stuff, because, you know, as a man, it's not, I don't have periods, so it's nothing that I can physically experience. But it's just something, you know, a different perspective that I wouldn't maybe have had before.
That's great. That's great. And you made it onto the BBC as well.
Yeah. For a
That's
positive reason.
For positive reasons, yes. Saskia, would you like to say some last words about what
how
you've been
nice.
working on?
Yeah, it's been lovely listening to all this, because you can see that there is a moment, isn't there, where you suddenly feel freer. And I think that's such a wonderful thing. And I've been hearing from all of you that, you know, we weren't aware there was this problem, and yet we're in 2022 and we're in the UK, and you know, it's still amazing to see that it's there. But there is, you know, this good work happening. For me particularly, it's always seeing these little activists created in a classroom who will make much more of an impact than anyone else. You know, in a class of young people, we really need to find those who feel, you know, no shame, who feel that they're happy to stand up and sort of fly the flag and say, you know, yeah, I leaked through my uniform today, and they're the ones that we need to find to create that ripple effect. And usually, you know, that has come from really strong positive messaging at home. You know, I think it was George talking about the packs, and they were sharing them. The parents were sharing them with their children. That's so powerful. You know, we are breaking down cultural barriers around all the stigma in schools as well, where we're addressing things like, you know, I'm still hearing young people say, "Is it okay for me to cook?" and all those things. That is shifting now. They're harder shell to crack. But for me, it's sort of that eureka moment where even the boys who are in on the conversation are so curious, and who suddenly realize they don't have this opportunity to tap into a really strong sign of their general health every month, because that's how we need to reframe them. It's not just about conception and whether we want to have babies. It's a really regular sign of our health being where it should be. And I think that there is at some point a sort of envy from across the class going, I don't really have that. So for me, it's those little moments which are just envy, gold nuggets. Yeah. But thank you, Helen, for hosting. It's been lovely today.
It's been brilliant, and thank you so much for your time, George, Ellen, Malachi, and Saskia. Really appreciate it, and also for all the participants who joined us. It's been really good. I've seen lots of switching of emails or sharing of emails, and I mean, this part of why we do Environmental Week of Action, why we do environmental work, but why we do the Week of Action every year, is to kind of generate the conversation, break down taboos, address the stigmas, and celebrate periods as well, in all their forms. We have lots of events still happening through the week, as do other organisations as well. There's information on our website, social media. Please attend, please share, please support the work as well. Very important to support WEN and the work it's doing on environmental. Believe it or not, it's still very hard to fund. Maybe that's a big taboo and stigma, but we really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Thanks.